Hi readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads, and welcome to my weekend books. This week started on a low note, but ended on a high note and influenced my next read, or my current read, and a video I ended up making that will be published tomorrow. Let's just dive right into it, and I forgot my glasses again. Oh well. So, low note. I originally gave this 3 stars, but after sleeping on it, I went back and gave it 2. And that is Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. I bought this and like another of her books because somebody that I follow on Goodreads said every book that they had read by her was 5 stars. And I was seriously disappointed by this one. When N.T. Flynn arrives in the Scottish Highlands with a team of biologists to reintroduce 14 grey wolves, she hopes to heal not only the dying landscape, but her traumatized twin sister, too. Oh yeah, I forgot about that part. N.T. is not the woman she was, either, changed by the harm she's witnessed, inflicted by humans on both the wild and one another. Yet as the wolves surprise everyone by thriving, N.T. begins to let her guard down until a farmer is found dead. Knowing where the town will lay blame, N.T. makes a reckless decision to protect her wolves. But if not the wolves, then who was really responsible? And what will N.T. do when the man she is falling for seems to be the prime suspect? There are so many problematic aspects of this. First of all, let's talk about the environmentalism. I am not anti-environmentalism. However, I wrote down at the end of the book that it was a little heavy-handed in here. It sometimes felt like I was reading a lecture, and that's not what I want when I'm reading for entertainment. There is a way to educate people about something without preaching to them or lecturing them, and this was not it. But that was the least of the problems. I was seriously let down by the ending. I thought it was a little bit of a cop-out. And there is a problematic scene in here that I just can't adjust to. Overall, in parts, the writing was beautiful, but the N.T., the main character, makes bad decisions. She doesn't act like a leader, and the sister who's traumatized, it really leans into some stereotypes about trauma and PTSD and how one reacts to that. Overall, not a good read for me. So with this start to the week, again, seriously disappointed, not having a good time, so I chose to go with something light next, and that is Annabelle Slater's The Launch Date. This was a breath of fresh air after this one, and I didn't tab it. I think I finished it in 2 nights. It's just really light comedy. What if the secret to finding true love on a dating app was meeting them in real life first? Anyway, that aside, Grace Hastings' dream job at the popular True Love dating app Fate has turned into a nightmare. Her boss sucks, her career is stagnating, and her fiancé has just brutally dumped her. Her hope for finding her own love story is waning, and she feels like a fraud for promoting a concept she no longer believes in. When the company's CEO offers her an opportunity to earn a big promotion, she resolves to fight her imposter syndrome to show she deserves a seat at the table. The opportunity to launch a brand new app focusing on in-real-life dating and genuine connection. The problem, she must develop and test drive a series of first dates with the other person gunning for the job. Notorious socialite playboy and Grace's biggest work rival, Eric Bancroft. During their disastrous hikes, dangerous cooking classes, and steamy yoga sessions, they begin to realize their stark differences may just be the surface level, and Eric might be the perfect person to challenge Grace's perception of love, dating culture, and self-worth. So many things are good about this. One is Eric is a well-rounded individual. His character is fleshed out. Why is this people making noise on my phone? His character's fleshed out. He's got good sides and bad sides. Spoiler alert, he's in love with Grace from the start. And she's a good character as well. Her ex is a little bit flat, but whatever. He doesn't matter. He's off the page most of the time anyway. But I had a really good time with it. I've got to say, I don't really remember a lot about the ending, even though I read it just last week, but that's fine. Although it's forgettable in a good way. So I could go back and read this in several years and still have a good time with it if I needed something light. Next up, I picked this book up on a whim right after it was published, and I wasn't sure that I would get to it soon. However, the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction was announced on 4 March, and I discovered that Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell was on that list. I read this book, folks, in a night. There are no tabs because I could not put it down long enough to tab anything. Also, there were some parts I had to skim through because it made me anxious, and I had to get quickly to the end of the scene to calm myself down. I am going to put this on the shelf for now because I will talk about it again in relation to a video I want to do about refugees and this whole idea about how hard or easy it is to leave. But let me tell you what this one's about. On a bright spring afternoon, Clara Fay makes a split decision that will change everything. Grabbing an armful of clothes off the clothesline, she straps her 2 young daughters into her car and drives away. Head spinning, all she knows for certain is that home is no longer safe, and that this time, when she leaves, she must stay away. This time is important. On the surface, she has a perfect life. Her sometimes kind and attentive husband, Ryan, is a good provider from a nice family, and they have another baby on the way. But he also monitors Clara's I think it's Kiara. I apologize if I just butchered that. I don't have my glasses, so I think I read it as Clara. Anywho, Kiara. He also monitors Kiara's every move and flies into unpredictable rages in which he convinces her she can do nothing right, and he has isolated her from work, friends, and her beloved family. The gaslighting is real in this one, y'all. It made me so anxious. I just wanted to jump into the book and punch him. Was fleeing the right thing to do? With no job and no support, Kiara struggles to provide a sense of normalcy for her little girls. Facing a broken housing system, they move into a hotel room on a floor reserved for women like her, eating takeout, washing their clothes in the bathroom sink, and building a community with the other residents. Ryan, meanwhile, wages a relentless campaign to win her back, and Kiara wavers. He never hit her after all, and don't the girls need a stable home and their father? The next line in this calls the book suspenseful and all-consuming, and it was. Oh boy. I can't recommend this book enough. It was fantastic. There was one character that I thought was a little bit unnecessary, but I am not a person who jumps from love to love to love to love to love, but I realize that people out there exist like that, and it is what it is. Just because I'm not like that does not mean it's not realistic or unnecessary. So there was the only one thing, I didn't mean to spoil that, but anyway, there was only one part that I didn't really jive with. Otherwise, if this makes the short list, and there are a lot of fantastic books on the long list, I will probably talk about this again. If not, I'll move on and talk about the books that do make the short list. But speaking of the Women's Prize for Fiction, tomorrow I will publish a video about the 7 books that I own that are on the long list and that I intend to read sooner rather than later. But after nesting, I decided I'd pick up last year's winner, which I've had for a while. It's been in one of my carts over there for a long time, and that is V.V. Ganeshananthan. I apologize. Brotherless Night. I apologize. I realized I listened to an interview with her, and I understand zero about English pronunciations of Sri Lankan words. So most glaringly is what I thought was Tamil, but is Tamil or Tamil. So I'm going to just tell you from the start, I don't know how to pronounce any of these words, and I am embarrassed about it. I started reading this on Thursday. Now, Friday, this is Sunday when I'm recording this. Friday, I did not read because I had a book swap with members of the book club, which was great fun, by the way. So I really didn't pick this up again until last night. I passed the halfway mark. This is where I am now. I've got that much more. It is a slower read, but I, right now, am planning to do a standalone video review, not even a review, of commentary on how moving Brotherless Night is. I don't even mind that it's taken me a while to read it. This is fantastic. And it's what I'm, currently reading. I might not even finish it tonight. It's that I have to stop and pick up my pen and rethink over things that happen in this book. Jaffna, 1981. 16-year-old Sashi wants to become a doctor, but over the next decade, a vicious civil war tears through her home, and her dream spins off course as she sees her 4 beloved brothers and their friend Kay swept up into the mounting violence. Desperate to act, Sashi accepts Kay's invitation to work as a medic at a field hospital for the militant Tamil Tigers, who, following years of state discrimination and violence, are fighting for a separate homeland for Sri Lanka's Tamil minority. But after the Tigers murder one of her teachers, and Indian peacekeepers arrive only to commit further atrocities, Sashi begins to question where she stands. When one of her medical school professors, a Tamil feminist and dissident, invites her to join a secret project documenting human rights violations, she embarks on a dangerous path that will change her forever. Yesterday I listened to a podcast interview with the author done shortly after the morning after she won this award for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2024. But prior to that, I had done like a Wikipedia search on the Sri Lankan Civil War, and I realized from both of those things that this civil war is so complex, and politically and ethnically, there's so much going on in here. It is not black and white at all. And that's what I want to discuss in my standalone video on this. They talk about the Indian peacekeepers and, committing further atrocities, the Tamils committing atrocities, is it Sinhalese also committing, the main government, also committing atrocities. It's really just illustrative of the fact that life is not black and white, that it is complex, and there are real people involved. So I'm not even finished, and I already highly recommend this book. I can't wait to pick it back up, but I've got chores to do today. Today, by the way, is the start of daylight savings time, and I'm struggling this morning, and I do not know, well, it's not morning, it's afternoon. I don't know why, because I got to sleep in. Tomorrow is probably going to be even worse. On the nonfiction side, I am reading, can't remember if I talked about this last week or not, Paris Undercover, a wartime story of courage, friendship, and betrayal by Matthew Goodman. So I have the book that Etta Schreiber wrote, Paris Underground, and I was originally going to read that first. I am glad that I did not. I listened to 2 podcasts with interviews with the author, and I was like, I'm going to read this first, and I'm so glad I did. In tone, it's novelistic. It is a quick read. It's easy. Two women in Nazi-occupied Paris created a daring escape line that rescued dozens of Allied servicemen, with one still servicemen, period. With one still in a German prison camp, the other wrote a book about it, a memoir built on fabrications. So yeah, it was actually ghostwritten. I did not realize that, and when I realized that, that's when I decided to read this one first, so that I would know the rest of the story. Etta Schreiber and Kate Boniface are the unlikeliest of heroines. Two seemingly ordinary women, an American widow and an English divorcee, living quietly in Paris. Yet during the Nazi occupation, these two friends find themselves unexpectedly plunged into the whirlwind of history. With the help of a French country priest and others, they set out to rescue British and French soldiers trapped behind enemy lines, some of whom they daringly smuggle through Nazi checkpoints hidden inside the trunk of their car. Ultimately, the Gestapo captures them both. After 18 months in prison, Etta is returned to the United States in a prisoner exchange. Back home, hoping to bring attention to her friend Kate's bravery, she publishes a memoir about their work. Paris Underground, that's her novel, becomes a publishing sensation, and it was a Book of the Month Club pick. And Etta a celebrity. Meanwhile, Kate spends the rest of the war in a Nazi prison, entirely unaware of the book that has been written about her, and the deeds that have been claimed in her name. In researching this story, Matthew Goodman uncovered military records and personal testimonies that reveal, for the first time, the shocking truth behind Etta's memoir and the unexpected, far-reaching consequences of its publication. More than just a story of two women's remarkable courage, Paris Undercover is a vivid, gripping account of deceit, betrayal, and personal redemption. And so far, it is all that. It's just an amazing story, and I can't tell any more without spoiling it. I considered listening to the audiobook version of this, but I chose not to. I decided I wanted to read it. So glad I did. I retain better when I actually read a physical book. So, alright, I am not listening to any audiobooks right now. I needed a break after I finished The Coming of the Third Reich, so I have been listening to podcasts. Like I said, I listened to a podcast interview with this author. I've listened to a couple podcasts about Paris Undercover, and I think I'm going to keep doing that for a minute or two, because I'm not ready to invest that many hours and that many days in an audiobook, especially since I listen to audiobooks primarily when I'm driving. Sometimes when I'm driving, I actually have to pay attention to the road, and I tune out and I miss stuff. So I just want to give my brain a rest for a minute. So what's up next this week? Tomorrow, I mentioned, I've got a video coming out about the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. As I said, the long list was announced for March. I've got 7 of those books. The short list will be announced on 2 April, and I'm looking forward to seeing what books I have that are on that list, hopefully several of them. And Wednesday, in celebration of Women's History Month, I'm talking feminist shit. Anywho, that is it for me. This is a rather short reading week, and not sure what next week will... I do have an idea what next week will bring, but I'll save it for then. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you as always for sticking with me on my journey, and happy reading.